Every species fled the invasion. Only humanity chose to battle. Part 1: The Great Exodus. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their seats, and none of them could speak. The air was heavy with fear. On the massive screens that covered the walls, images played over and over again. Burning planets, dead cities, billions of lives ending in fire and darkness. Ambassador Al of the Collective stood at the center podium. His pale blue skin was shaking. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly as he tried to find the right words. "The harvesters have crossed into the outer rim," he finally said. 17 star systems have fallen in the last 30 days. We have no choice. We must run." A wave of panic spread through the chamber. The harvesters were the oldest nightmare in the galaxy. They were not an army or an empire. They were a swarm. Millions upon millions of living ships that moved through space like locusts through a wheat field. They consumed everything. Every planet they touched became a dead rock. Every civilization they found became dust and memory. No one had ever defeated them. Not the ancient empire with their ships that could destroy stars. Not the Dominion with their armies of 1 trillion soldiers. Not the Brilliant with their technology that seemed like magic. All of them had tried to fight. All of them had died. The only species that survived were the ones that ran. Elder Hex of the rose slowly from his seat. He was nearly 4,000 years old, and his gray skin hung loose on his thin frame. But his mind was still sharp, and his voice still carried weight. "The Council will vote on the Exodus Protocol," he announced. "Each species will choose their method of survival. They will travel to the Andromeda Galaxy. It is a journey of 2 million light years, but our generation ships are prepared." One by one, the other species announced their plans. They would dig deep into dead moons and hibernate for thousands of years. They would scatter their population across 100 hidden colonies in the darkest corners of the universe. They would abandon their physical bodies entirely and drift as pure energy through the void. It was the same story it had always been. Run, hide, survive, wait for the harvesters to pass and hope they never came back. Then it was humanity's turn to speak. Admiral Grace walked to the podium with slow, steady steps. She was 63 years old, with silver hair pulled back tight and a face that had seen too many battles. Her uniform was simple and dark, decorated only with small ribbons that marked her years of service. The other species looked at her with something close to pity. Humanity was young. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 80 years ago. They had only joined the Galactic Council 30 years ago. They were children playing in a garden full of monsters. Grace looked out at the assembled representatives. She saw their fear. She understood it. But she also saw something else. She saw species that had lived for millions of years choosing to abandon everything they had built rather than stand and fight. "The United Earth government has considered the Exodus Protocol," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We decline." The chamber went silent, then it erupted in chaos. Ambassador Al pushed forward, his skin flushing with confusion. "There must be a translation error. You understand what the harvesters are. You understand that fighting them means death." "We understand perfectly," Grace replied. "Humanity chooses to fight." The noise in the chamber grew louder. Representatives shouted at each other. Some laughed at the foolish young species. Others shook their heads in sorrow. A few simply stared in disbelief. Elder Hex raised his hand, and slowly the room fell quiet again. He looked at Grace with ancient eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. "Young one," he said softly, "I have watched the harvesters destroy species far older and more powerful than yours. The Eternal Empire have had weapons that could crack planets in half. They lasted 3 months. What makes you believe your people can do what they could not?" Grace smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. "You ask the wrong question, Elder. You assume we believe we can win. We do not know if we can win. No one knows until they try." She paused and looked around the chamber. "But humanity has learned something in our short time among the stars, something that perhaps older species have forgotten." She took a deep breath. "There are things worth dying for. There are evils you cannot run from forever. The harvesters will find you eventually. In 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years they will find you. They always do. We choose to meet them now on our terms while we still have the strength to stand." The representative stared at her in silence. "You are all welcome to flee," Grace continued. "We do not judge you for it, but humanity will remain. We will fight. And whether we win or lose, the galaxy will remember that at least one species refused to kneel." She gathered her papers and nodded to her delegation. As they walked toward the exit, she stopped and looked back one more time. "Good luck to you all. May your exodus carry you to safety." The doors closed behind her. Elder Hex sat in silence for a long moment. In 4,000 years of life, he had seen many things, but he had never seen anything quite like this. A species walking willingly into certain death, not because they believed they could win, but because they believed it was right. "Remarkable," he whispered to himself. "Utterly foolish, but remarkable." Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. Every screen on every continent showed the same footage. Admiral standing before the Galactic Council, her words echoing across the world. "Humanity chooses to fight." The reaction was mixed. Some people cheered in the streets. They called it the bravest moment in human history. Others wept. They called it suicide. They said the government had condemned 8 billion people to death for nothing but pride. In a small apartment in Chicago, a man named Danny watched the broadcasts with his 4-year-old daughter Maria on his lap. His wife had died 3 years ago, and now it was just the two of them against the world. "Daddy, why is everyone so scared?" Maria asked. Danny looked at his daughter. She had her mother's eyes, dark and curious and full of wonder. "Because something bad is coming, baby girl," he said softly. "Something very bad. Can we stop it?" Danny thought about the question for a long time. He thought about all the species running away. He thought about Admiral standing alone at that podium. He thought about what kind of world he wanted his daughter to grow up in. "I don't know," he finally said, "but we're going to try." That night after Maria fell asleep, Danny walked to the nearest military recruitment center. The line stretched around the block. Thousands of men and women, young and old, all waiting to sign up. He was one of 12 million volunteers who enlisted in the first week. Humanity was going to war. Every species fled the invasion. Only humanity chose to battle. Part 2: The Thin Blue Line. 6 months passed like a heartbeat. Every factory on Earth changed what it made. Car factories now built fighter ships. Phone companies now produced communication systems for the military. Farms grew extra food to feed the armies. Schools taught children how to find shelter if the fighting came to Earth. The entire human race had one goal: get ready for the harvesters. Commander Kate stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, watching her crew practice combat drills for the 100th time. She was 38 years old, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. 6 months ago, she had been captain of a small patrol ship guarding trade routes. Now she commanded one of the largest warships in the human fleet. The war had changed everyone. People who showed skill rose quickly through the ranks. There was no time for slow promotions or political games. If you could fight, you fought. If you could lead, you led. "Simulation complete," announced Lieutenant Perry, her tactical officer. He was young, barely 25, but he handled the weapon systems better than anyone Kate had ever seen. Response time improved by 3% from yesterday. "Run it again," Kate ordered. "And this time make the enemy attacks random. The harvesters do not follow patterns we can predict." Lieutenant Perry nodded and reset the simulation. Around the bridge, the crew members groaned quietly but returned to their stations. They were exhausted. Everyone was exhausted, but no one complained out loud. They all knew what was coming. Kate returned to her private terminal and checked the latest intelligence reports. The news made her stomach tight. The harvesters had consumed 4 more star systems in the past month. Billions of alien lives gone in an instant. The swarm was getting closer. Sometimes refugee ships from the fleeing alien species passed through human space. Kate had spoken to some of the refugees. They looked at the human defenses with strange expressions. Some seemed pitiful, like they were watching children building sand castles before a tsunami. Others seemed almost impressed, though Kate could not understand why. A priority message flashed on her screen. Admiral was calling a meeting of all ship captains. 1 hour later, Kate stood in the holographic conference chamber on Unity Station, the main command center for the human defense fleet. 200 other captains stood with her. Some she knew, most she did not. The war had brought together people from every nation and background on Earth. Admiral's face appeared on the main display. She looked older than she had 6 months ago. The stress of command was wearing her down, but her eyes were still fierce and her voice was still strong. "I will keep this short," she said. "Our long-range sensors have detected the harvester swarm. They have changed direction and are heading straight for human space. They will arrive in 47 days. The room went completely still. 47 days, less than 2 months. Kate felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her face calm. "We have known this was coming," the Admiral continued. "Now we know when. For the next 47 days, I want every ship running at maximum capacity, every crew trained until they can fight in their sleep, every weapon tested again and again." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You have all heard the stories about the harvesters. They have never lost. Every species that fought them died. But those species fought alone. Each one thought they could win through better weapons or bigger numbers. None of them understood that victory requires something more than technology." Admiral looked directly into the camera, and Kate felt like the old woman was speaking to her personally. "We do not have better technology. We do not have bigger numbers. We are not smarter or stronger than the civilizations that fell before us. But we have something they did not have. We have nothing to lose and everything to protect. And maybe that will be enough." The meeting ended. The captains filed out in silence. Kate found herself walking beside an older officer named Captain Henry. He commanded the cruiser and had been serving in the military for over 30 years. "Do you think we can win?" Kate asked quietly. Henry thought about the question as they walked. His face was lined with age and worry, but his eyes were calm. "Honestly, probably not. The odds are very bad," he shrugged. "But I did not join this fight because I thought we would win. I joined because mine are on a colony ship heading for the next galaxy. Every day we hold the line gives them another chance to escape. Every hour we fight buys them more distance from the swarm." He put a hand on Kate's shoulder. "Do not fight to win. Fight to give someone else a chance to survive. That is all any of us can do." Kate nodded slowly. It was not the inspiring speech she had hoped for, but somehow it helped. Far away from the fleet, deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa, a secret research facility worked day and night on a different kind of weapon. Dr. Lena Park was a small woman with dark hair and tired eyes. She had not slept properly in months. The coffee in her cup had gone cold hours ago, but she had forgotten to drink it anyway. All of her attention was focused on the holographic display in front of her. General Cole stood behind her, waiting patiently. He was a large man with a shaved head and the patience of stone. He had learned long ago that scientists worked on their own schedule. "You said you found something," he finally said. "What is it?" Lena took a deep breath. "The harvesters are not truly alive. They are not truly machines either. They are something in between. a mix of organic tissue and technology that we have never seen before. She pointed at a section of the display. It showed the molecular structure of harvester tissue, recovered from a battle site thousands of years old. Their minds are spread across the entire swarm. Each unit is connected to all the others through a kind of neural network. That connection is what makes them so dangerous. They think and react as one being, not as millions of separate ships. General Cole nodded slowly. And you found a weakness. Maybe. Lena's voice was careful. The network requires constant communication between all the units. If we could disrupt that communication, even for a short time, we could cause massive confusion. The swarm would fall apart. Individual units would crash into each other. They would lose their coordination. Can we build something to do that? We are already building it. We call it the Prometheus device. Lena pulled up a new image showing a large spherical machine. It creates a special kind of electromagnetic pulse that should interfere with harvester communications. The problem is range. To affect the entire swarm, we would need to set it off at the very center of their formation. General Cole understood immediately. A ship would have to carry it there. Yes, a ship that would not be coming back. The general was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window of the lab, the frozen plains of Europa stretched to the horizon. Above them, somewhere in the darkness of space, the harvesters were coming. How confident are you that this will work? He asked. Lena finally looked at him. Her eyes were honest and scared. 60%, maybe 65. We do not have time for more testing. If we are wrong, it will not matter anyway. But if we are right, we might actually have a chance. General Cole made his decision. Build it, finish it as fast as you can, and I will find someone willing to fly it into hell. He turned and walked out of the lab. Behind him, Lena Park returned to her work. The fate of humanity might depend on a machine that had never been tested and a theory that might be wrong. But it was the only hope they had. Every species fled the invasion. Only humanity chose to battle. Part 3, First Contact. The harvesters arrived 5 days early. Commander Kate gripped her seat as the Defiance shook from a nearby explosion. She saw a nightmare come to life. The harvester swarm filled the space ahead like a dark cloud. Millions of ships, each one a twisted mix of metal and living tissue. They looked like insects, like crabs made of bone and steel. They moved together in perfect harmony, as if controlled by a single mind. Because they were. All batteries fire at will, Kate ordered. Her voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. Focus on the larger ships. Do not stop shooting. Around her, the human fleet fought with everything they had. Laser beams and missiles filled the space between the two forces. Harvester ships exploded by the thousands. But for every one that died, 10 more took its place. The swarm was endless. The victory is destroyed, Lieutenant Perry reported. His voice cracked with emotion. The Harbinger is reporting heavy damage. They are falling back. Tell them to stay in formation, Kate snapped. If we break apart, they will pick us off one by one. Commander Harbinger is gone. They just disappeared. Kate watched another symbol vanish from her tactical display. 18 ships lost in the first hour of battle. The harvesters had lost many more, but it did not seem to matter. They just kept coming. Admiral's voice came through the fleet-wide communication channel. She sounded tired but calm. All ships, this is command. Begin tactical withdrawal to the secondary defense line near Jupiter. We need to save our remaining strength for the next engagement. Repeat, fall back to secondary positions. The retreat began. It was organized but costly. The harvesters chased the human fleet without stopping. They caught damaged ships and destroyed any vessel that fell behind. By the time the human fleet reached Jupiter, they had lost 43 ships and nearly 20,000 people. Kate slumped in her chair as the Defiance limped into the shadow of the orbital fortress called Bastion. Her ship had taken heavy damage. Half her crew was wounded. The other half was exhausted beyond words. "How long can we keep this up?" Lieutenant Perry asked quietly. Kate did not answer. She did not know. But looking at the swarm still advancing, still endless, she was afraid the answer was not long at all. On Earth, people watched the battle through news broadcasts and sensor feeds. Every screen showed the same terrible images. Human ships fighting and dying. The swarm advancing closer and closer to home. But there was no panic in the streets. No riots. No chaos. People went to work. They held their families close. They prayed to whatever gods they believed in. And they waited. In a small church in Kentucky, Father led his congregation in prayer. The building was full for the first time in years. Old enemies sat together as friends. Old arguments were forgotten. When death might come at any moment, the small problems of everyday life seemed foolish. "Lord, give our soldiers the strength to protect us," Father said. "Give us the courage to face whatever comes. And if this is to be our end, help us face it with dignity." A little girl in the front row raised her hand. She had hair in pigtails and a serious expression on her young face. Father smiled and called on her. "If the monsters win, will we go to heaven?" The question was so innocent and so terrible at the same time. Father felt tears in his eyes, but he kept his voice gentle. "If we live good lives and love each other, yes. But let us have faith that the people fighting for us will keep us safe." The girl nodded. "My daddy is up there. He is a pilot. He is really brave." "Then you should be very proud of him." "I am," the girl smiled. "I made him a picture of our family. He put it in his ship so we could fly with him." Father had to look away for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "That is beautiful, sweetheart. I am sure it gives him strength." Outside the church, the sun was setting. The sky was painted orange and red, beautiful and peaceful. It was hard to believe that somewhere far above, beyond the sky and the stars, humanity was fighting for its life. The battle continued for 14 days. Each day brought more losses. Mars was evacuated. The stations around Jupiter were destroyed. The human fleet fell back again and again, trading space for time. The harvesters learned fast. They adapted to human tactics. They changed their formations. They found weaknesses and exploited them. Every small victory the humans achieved was answered by a larger defeat. In the command center of Unity Station, Admiral Grace studied the strategic display with red eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. Around her, her staff moved like ghosts, too tired to feel anything anymore. "Final reports from the Jupiter engagement," her aide said. "We have lost 62% of our fleet. Remaining ships are at various levels of damage. Ammunition is running low. The harvesters will reach Earth in approximately 40 hours." Grace nodded slowly. 40 hours, less than 2 days until the end. "And the Prometheus device?" she asked. "Complete and ready. The ship Dauntless has been modified to carry it. But Admiral, the mission is suicide. The pilot would have to fly to the center of the swarm. The chances of survival are 0. "I know." Grace turned to face her aide. "Do we have a volunteer?" "We have 2,000 volunteers. Choosing one has been difficult." Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she made a decision she had been thinking about for days. "I will do it myself." Her aide went pale. "Admiral, you cannot. You are the fleet commander. We need you here." "What you need is someone to carry a bomb into the enemy. I am old. I am tired. I have given everything to this fight." Grace smiled sadly. "Let me give one more thing." Before her aide could argue, a new voice spoke from the doorway. "With respect, Admiral, I think that job belongs to me." Commander Kate stood at the entrance. Her uniform was torn and covered in smoke stains. The Defiance had been destroyed 6 hours ago in a desperate battle to protect retreating transport ships. Kate had gotten her surviving crew to safety, then made her way to Unity Station. Grace said carefully, You have already done enough. You lost your ship, your crew. 23 of them survived because I got them off in time, Kate interrupted. 23 people who will see tomorrow, if we can give them a tomorrow to see. She stepped forward. Her eyes were tired but determined. I read the mission details. You need someone who can fly through impossible odds, someone who has nothing left to lose. That is me. Grace studied the young commander. She saw the exhaustion, the grief, the quiet acceptance of what had to be done. You have a sister, Grace said softly, on the colony ship heading to Andromeda. She is safe, halfway to the next galaxy by now. Kate's jaw tightened. But 8 billion people on Earth are not safe. Let me do this. It is what I was meant to do. The two women looked at each other, old and young, both warriors, both willing to die for something bigger than themselves. Very well, Grace finally said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Godspeed, Commander. Kate nodded once, then turned and walked out to prepare for her final mission. Behind her, Admiral watched her go. In all her years of service, she had never met anyone braver. She hoped it would be enough. Every species fled the invasion. Only humanity chose to battle. Part 4. The Darkness Before Dawn. The Dauntless was a small ship, fast and light, built for speed rather than strength. The engineers had stripped out everything that was not essential. No extra weapons, no comfortable quarters, no emergency supplies. All that space was now filled by the Prometheus device, a silver sphere the size of a small house that hummed with strange energy. Commander Kate sat in the pilot's seat, running through her final checks. The controls were simple. The mission was not. She had to fly through millions of harvester ships, reach the center of the swarm, and activate the device. Then she would have 10 seconds before it exploded. 10 seconds was not enough time to escape. Everyone knew it. Kate knew it best of all. She looked around the small cockpit. On the wall beside her she had taped a photograph. It showed her and her younger sister Amy, taken 5 years ago at their parents' house. Both of them were smiling. Both of them were happy. Amy was on the colony ship now, heading for the Andromeda galaxy. She would probably never know what happened here. Kate touched the photograph gently. I will keep you safe, little sister, I promise. Her communication panel lit up. Messages were coming in, hundreds of them, then thousands. She opened one at random. It was a video from a little girl with hair and pigtails. Dear Commander, the girl said in a small voice. My name is Sophie. My daddy was a pilot. He died last week fighting the monsters. He always said that brave people do scary things to protect the people they love. I think you are very brave. Thank you for protecting us. Kate felt tears in her eyes. She opened another message. This one was from an old man in Japan. I am 87 years old. I have lived a good life. I am not afraid to die, but my are young. They deserve a chance to grow up. Thank you for giving them that chance. Another message. A teacher in Brazil, a doctor in Kenya, a factory worker in Germany, a teenager in Australia. Messages from every corner of Earth. From soldiers in the fleet. From civilians in shelters. From children too young to understand what was happening. All of them saying the same thing in different words. Thank you, we believe in you, you are not alone. Kate read as many as she could. Each one gave her strength. Each one reminded her why she was doing this. Dauntless, you are cleared for launch, said the voice from Unity Command. Good luck, Commander. All of humanity is with you. Kate wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. She placed her hands on the controls. Dauntless launching now. The small ship shot forward into the darkness of space. The harvester swarm filled the view ahead like a wall of death, millions of ships moving in perfect formation. They saw the Dauntless immediately. They moved to intercept. Kate flew like she had never flown before. She twisted and turned through the gaps between enemy ships. She dove and climbed and rolled, always moving, never stopping. The harvesters fired at her, but she was too fast, too unpredictable. "Come on," she whispered to herself, "just a little further." A harvester fighter clipped her left wing. Alarms screamed. The ship shuddered. Kate compensated, adjusting her course, keeping the Dauntless flying. Halfway there, keep going. The center of the swarm loomed ahead. It was the command structure, a massive twisted thing made of metal and organic tissue. It was the brain of the entire swarm. If the Prometheus device could destroy it, the rest of the harvesters would fall into chaos. More enemy fire. A piece of the hull tore away. Warning lights flashed across every screen. The Dauntless was falling apart around her. Almost there, just a little more. She could see it now. The heart of the beast, pulsing with dark energy, controlling millions of ships across thousands of kilometers. Kate armed the Prometheus device. A simple switch, a simple button, 10 seconds to detonation. She opened a communication channel to the fleet, to Earth, to anyone who could hear. "This is Commander Kate of the United Earth Navy. I am at the target, activating the device now." She paused. There was so much she wanted to say, so many people she wanted to thank, but there was no time. "Tell my sister I love her. Tell Earth that we did our best. Tell the galaxy that humanity does not run." She pressed the button. Goodbye. The universe went white. On Unity Station, Admiral Grace watched the sensor readings. For a long moment there was nothing but static. Then the displays cleared. The center of the harvester swarm was gone, destroyed, and spreading outward from that point of destruction, the rest of the swarm was falling apart. Ships crashed into each other. Formations broke. The perfect coordination that had made the harvesters invincible was shattered. Dr. Lena Park had been right. The Prometheus device worked. Grace felt tears streaming down her face, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "All ships, this is Admiral. Attack now. Attack with everything you have. This is our chance." The remains of the human fleet surged forward. Ships that had been barely holding together found new strength. Crews that had been ready to die found new hope. They hit the confused and disorganized swarm with every weapon they had left. The harvesters tried to regroup. They tried to restore their coordination. But without their command structure, they were just millions of individual ships, dangerous but no longer invincible. The battle raged for another 6 days. 6 days of brutal fighting. 6 days of sacrifice and courage. Humans died by the thousands, but harvesters died by the millions. When it was finally over, the swarm was broken. Not completely destroyed, but shattered and scattered. The survivors fled into deep space, pursued by human ships that showed no mercy. For the first time in galactic history, the harvesters had been defeated. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People poured into the streets. They hugged strangers. They wept with joy. Church bells rang. Fireworks exploded. The nightmare was over. In the small church in Kentucky, Father led a prayer of thanksgiving. Sophie, the little girl who had lost her father, sat in the front row. She was not smiling exactly, but there was peace in her young eyes. "Commander saved us," she said quietly, "just like my daddy tried to do." Father nodded. "They are both heroes. We will never forget them." In Chicago, Danny held his daughter Maria tight. He had survived the war. Many of his friends had not, but Maria was safe. That was all that mattered. "Is the scary thing gone, Daddy?" Maria asked. "Yes, baby girl, the scary thing is gone." "Did we win?" Danny thought about all the people who had died, all the ships that had been destroyed, Commander flying into the heart of the swarm. The price of victory had been terrible. But they had paid it, and humanity had survived. "Yes," he said softly, "we won." High above Earth, in the ruins of Unity Station, Admiral Grace stood alone at a window. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the broken remains of the harvester swarm were still fleeing. Somewhere out there, Kate's sacrifice had changed the course of galactic history. "Thank you," Grace whispered to the darkness. "Thank you for everything." She did not know if Kate could hear her, but she hoped somehow that she could. Every species fled the invasion. Only humanity chose to battle. Part 5: Humanity Endures. The news traveled across the galaxy at the speed of light. On refugee ships scattered throughout the universe, alien species received the impossible message. The harvesters had been defeated, not driven away, not survived, defeated, by the youngest, smallest, most primitive species in the Galactic Council. They received the news first. Ambassador Al sat in his quarters on a cramped transport ship, staring at the report on his screen. His pale blue skin flickered through a dozen different emotional patterns as he tried to understand what he was reading. "This cannot be correct," he said to his aide. "Check the transmission again." "I have checked it 5 times, Ambassador. The humans won. The harvesters are scattered and fleeing." Al was silent for a long time. He remembered standing in the Galactic Council chamber, watching Admiral announce that humanity would fight. He remembered thinking how foolish they were, how naive, how young. He had been wrong. On a generation ship heading for the Andromeda Galaxy, Elder Hex of the received the same news. He was alone in his meditation chamber, surrounded by the soft glow of ancient crystals. He read the report 3 times before he believed it. "Remarkable," he said softly. It was the same word he had used when humanity first announced their decision to fight, but now it meant something different. Now it carried the weight of truth. He remembered his words to the human admiral. He had called them a young species. He had said they could not succeed where older and more powerful civilizations had failed. He had been so certain of their doom. And yet here they stood, victorious. "Perhaps," the elder whispered to himself, "we have been measuring strength in the wrong way." The alien species began to return, slowly at first, then in greater numbers. They came back to their home systems and found them empty but intact. The harvesters had been stopped before they could spread further. Many of them traveled to Earth to pay their respects. They wanted to see the species that had done the impossible. They wanted to understand how such a young civilization had accomplished what ancient empires could not. What they found surprised them. The humans were not celebrating their victory with arrogance or pride. They were mourning their dead. Nearly 3 million humans had died in the war. Ships had been destroyed. Families had been torn apart. The cost of victory was written in grief across the entire planet. But the humans were also rebuilding. Factories were being repaired. Ships were being constructed. Soldiers were being trained. Even as they mourned the past, they were preparing for the future. Ambassador Al met with the new leader of the United Earth government, a quiet woman named President Lisa Torres. He had expected boasting. He had expected demands. Instead, he found only calm determination. "We are grateful for your visit, Ambassador," President Torres said. "But you should know that we do not seek repayment for what we did. We fought because it was right. We would do it again." "But why?" Al asked. The question had been burning in his mind since he received the news. "Why did you fight when everyone else ran? What made you different?" President Torres thought about the question for a moment. "I think it is because we are still young," she said finally. "We have not yet learned to accept defeat. We have not yet learned that some enemies cannot be fought. Our history is full of times when we faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. Sometimes we lost. Sometimes we won. But we always fought." She looked out the window at the rebuilding city below. The older species have seen so much. They have learned wisdom. They know when to fight and when to run, but perhaps they have lost something along the way. Perhaps they have forgotten that sometimes the only way to survive is to be willing to die. Al considered her words. He had lived for over 200 years. His species had existed for millions. In all that time they had learned one lesson above all others: survival was everything. run from danger, hide from threats, live to see another day. But the humans had taught him a different lesson. Some things were worth more than survival. Some battles had to be fought, even if victory was uncertain. Some enemies had to be faced, even if the cost was everything. "You have changed the galaxy," he said quietly. "Nothing will be the same after this." President Torres nodded. "We hope it changes for the better." In the years that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Galactic Council was reformed with Earth at its center, not because humans demanded it, but because the other species recognized what humanity represented: courage, determination, the willingness to sacrifice for others. The alien civilizations offered their technology and knowledge freely. Starships became faster, weapons became stronger, medicine became more advanced. Humanity grew and expanded across the stars. But they never forgot the war. They never forgot the price that had been paid. On every human world, memorials were built to honor the fallen. The largest stood on Earth, in the ruins of the old United Nations building. It was a simple wall of black stone, stretching for kilometers, covered with names. Nearly 3 million names. Soldiers and civilians, pilots and engineers, men and women and children who had died so that others could live. At the center of the memorial, a statue stood alone. It showed a woman in a pilot's uniform, her face turned toward the stars. The plaque at her feet read simply, "Commander Kate. She flew into darkness so we could see the dawn." Every year on the anniversary of the Battle of Earth, people gathered at the memorial. They laid flowers. They read names. They told stories of loved ones lost. Amy, Kate's younger sister, returned from the Andromeda expedition 30 years after the war. Space travel had kept her young while decades passed on Earth. When she first saw the statue of her sister, she stood in silence for a long time. "She always wanted to be a hero," Amy said softly. "When we were children, she would pretend to save the world. I never imagined she would actually do it." A little girl approached Amy shyly. She was the granddaughter of Sophie, the girl who had lost her father in the war and sent a message to Kate before her final mission. "Excuse me," the girl said. "Are you really her sister, Commander's sister?" Amy smiled through her tears. "Yes, I am." "My great-grandmother said Commander read her message before she went. She said it helped her be brave." The girl held out a piece of paper. "I drew this for you. It is Commander flying to the stars." Amy took the drawing. It showed a small ship surrounded by light, flying upward into a field of stars. It was simple and beautiful, and it broke her heart. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will treasure it always." Deep in space, far from Earth, the scattered remains of the Harvester swarm drifted through the void. They were broken and confused. Their great intelligence had been shattered, but they were not dead. Slowly, over centuries, they would rebuild. They would remember what had happened. They would remember the species that had defeated them. And they would be afraid. The other species of the galaxy understood this. They knew the Harvesters would return someday, maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000, but they would come back. This time, however, things would be different. This time, the galaxy would not run. This time, they would stand together with humanity at their side. On every human world, children grew up hearing stories of the war. They learned about Admiral, who had stood before the Galactic Council and refused to flee. They learned about Dr. Lena Park, who had built the weapon that changed everything. They learned about Danny and the 12 million volunteers who had signed up to fight in the first week. And they learned about Commander Kate, who had flown into the heart of darkness and given her life for a future she would never see. These children grew up strong and brave. They became soldiers and scientists, leaders and teachers. They carried the legacy of the war in their hearts, and they made a promise to themselves and to the galaxy. If the darkness ever returned, they would face it. They would not run. They would not hide. They would stand and fight just as their ancestors had done. Because they were human, And that was what humans did. At the base of every memorial, on every world where humans lived, the same words were carved in stone. Words that captured everything humanity had learned from the war. Words that would echo through the ages as long as humans existed. When all others fled, humanity stood. When victory seemed impossible, humanity fought. When the price of survival was everything, humanity paid it. We are the children of those who would not run. We are the heirs of their courage. We will not forget. We will not falter. We will endure. The stars shone down on the memorials. The names of the dead glittered in the light. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the spirit of Kate flew on, a guardian watching over the species she had saved. The galaxy had learned something important from humanity, something that older and wiser species had forgotten over millions of years of existence. Hope was not about believing you would win. Hope was about fighting anyway. And as long as one human remained standing, there would always be hope. The end.